by for the Brewery Underground podcast.
In Nashville's harbor rise, cracked and bruised beneath the skies. Steve and Scott, they lead the way. Brewery Underground, night and day. Raise your glass, let's ignite. In this city, we unite. Raise your glass, let's ignite. In this city, we unite.
Hey, we are off and running here on the Brewery Underground podcast. Well, we're not exactly running, but Steve and Scott. And Scott, there is something today that I right off the bat, I think, and I just said, because that's a crutch word of mine. That'll be edited out.
Right out of the gate. Out of the gate.
Maybe that'll be edited out. Hey,
You got it out of the way.
got it out of the way. We've been doing this podcast, almost 3 years now. But
Coming up on
nothing is in comparison to the brewery Ska Brewing in Colorado. They've been around since 1995, bringing the history. Scott, bring in who we have on today from Ska.
We've got a guy, and I feel like we've talked to him for the last 5 minutes. I feel like I know him for a while now, and I feel like he's one of those guys who's got a great personality, and you probably hadn't met a stranger, which is a great thing. We've got Dave Thibodeau, who's co-founder, president, and operations of Ska Brewing out of Durango, Colorado. Dave, welcome.
Well,
Welcome.
thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. Happy to be here.
Yeah, this is awesome. I want to give a little precursor how we got to connect with you. So we had on Emily Hutto, who I think know pretty well.
But yeah,
And then she kind of put us together. She goes, I know who you guys have to talk to next. And she put us in contact with you, and here we are, and which is great. We've met. It's kind of a networking thing. We had Brent on from Riverbend, and then we kind of met Emily through that, and then they put us in touch with White Labs and also you. So we've got this network thing going on where we've connected to
Great.
you, and this is awesome.
great. Yeah, Emily's got a great network. She's a fantastic person. She now lives, as we were speaking before we hopped on, now she's in our neck of the woods. So, which, is a pretty rural neck.
Hey, girl. Well,
You describe that area if you don't mind. Durango, Colorado. Kind of tell us geographically where that is within the state.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're about a 6-hour drive from Denver. We're the far southwestern corner of the state. We're about 2 hours from Telluride. We're really close to the Four Corners, where you can actually stand in New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, and Colorado in one spot. It's pretty rural. Our town's about 18 or 19,000 in the city limits and about 47,000 in the county. Purgatory is our ski area. Wolf Creek ski area is really close, and Telluride's the next closest. So we're out there. You got to go over some big mountain passes if you're coming from the north or the east. So
probably see a little wildlife out there too, I would imagine.
quite a bit. Yeah. There's it's not unusual for me to see on my Ring camera at my house, and I live right in town, for me to see bears, mountain lion, deer every day, raccoons, fox. It's crazy.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. I think Emily said, if you had to go towards Denver or that area, you have to cross 2 mountain ranges or something. It's something
Yeah,
crazy.
you do.
Not an easy way to get there.
Pros and cons to that.
Mm-hmm.
Without
Well,
a doubt.
we do have to mention that Scott and I recently shared a beer that Emily had sent from Ska, and that was your West Coast IPA that we both enjoyed. We don't have any Ska on this episode tonight. However, I know I got something else. I have one of your stickers right here. How's
Sure.
that?
Well, I apologize for that. I know some was sent and it just hasn't got there, I guess.
Just
So-
hasn't
It's all
got here
good.
yet.
It's
It's
all
okay.
good. Yeah, it's all good.
It's okay. Look, I can pretend. Look, I've got the Ska koozie. I can pretend what's in here is Ska. Look.
Yeah. I've got some Ska, so I'll go ahead and start with I just had a West Coast. I had to kind of prime myself. Mid-afternoon, I'm low energy, and
Yeah.
it's 3:30 here. And so a beer at 3:30 pops me back into action. So
Yeah.
Let's
There we
go.
go.
Round 2, baby. Let's go.
Well, we had the Ska in Scott's garage. He was actually brewing some beer recently, and I brought the Ska over, so we made sure we did a beer share on it at West Coast IPA, and it was really good. But
Thanks.
today on this podcast episode, I have something that was given to us by another podcast friend, Rich from the Foamy Heads. This is Creature Comforts. It is the Piano Keys, the Ale Sharpton, and yeah. I've been drinking this for a little bit now. It's an Imperial Stout, and it's pretty good.
Nice.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Steve
Creature
started
Comforts
with like a
makes good beer.
9.6.
Oh my gosh.
Starting big on this podcast episode.
I've got the and we've talked about this many times. Stokehouse, the original, and Dave, what's significant about this beer? It's made in Tennessee. It's right here in Nashville. They use Riverbend malt in this beer, so just kind of a connecting all the dots, kind of thing.
Awesome.
So,
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you guys. I thought I knew that the podcast was from Nashville, but you guys had a central time zone thing on the meeting, and I was just curious if everybody was in the same spot or if you guys are in different parts of the country.
Yeah, he and I are just 30 minutes apart, so we're central. And I think when we put in Riverside, I think it puts our time. I assume it. When you see the invite, does it just say Central Time, or does it give your time?
Yes, and it says Chicago. So
I think we had confusion on that one. I think we were an hour off one time, or our guest was an hour off, but we made it work, and it was fine.
Yeah, that's fun. That's a funny thing with podcasts and interviews. You're trusting the computer to do the right thing, when you accept anybody's invitation, and it doesn't always do the right thing.
I always worry about it because I look at it. You never when you book a plane ticket, you're getting ready to book a plane ticket. You make sure the date's right and the time of the date's right, and you look at it 100 times before you hit send or whatever. I do that with this thing. I'll look at the invitation 100 times to make sure the date's right. It's an AM or PM. Just making sure you got every detail is just right.
And I've still gotten it wrong. I've even shown up at the airport on the wrong day.
Well, the other thing is, at the time we're recording this, it kind of dawned on me today that you're from Colorado, and I'm originally from Cincinnati. You might see some of my obnoxious Red stuff back there. The Reds are actually playing the Rockies right now in a series,
Oh, no
so
kidding.
the game will be on later. So who knows? Maybe, hopefully, it'll be a good game.
Where is the game? Where is it?
In Cincinnati.
It's in Cincinnati. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
I'll say for the Colorado, they hit those 500-foot home runs out there, don't they?
Yeah.
Right.
Are you guys both Predators fans?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yeah, you guys got a pretty good team out there. You guys got a pretty good team.
I'm fired up about it. We have a team that's, I don't know. I'm not going to say much more, but I'm really looking forward to this next series. So,
and you won the President's Cup too, didn't you?
I think so. Yep. So
yeah, and there's been a curse on the President's Cups teams that win it, but you guys don't seem to be hindered by that at all. You were rolling.
Yeah, it doesn't. I don't know. That's never really been a Colorado sports thing. The random different curses. I mean, really, if you think about it, the Avalanche isn't that old of a franchise. I mean, it is. That was early '90s, 90 or something. But Broncos, there just haven't been curses. I mean, we just kind of suck most of the time. But the Avalanche, they're just something else. And our Nuggets are having an okay season. There's some issues there, but they're squeaking along. They're still in the playoffs. But the Avalanche is, and I don't know. Hockey's just the funnest game. It's fun to watch, fun to play. I love hockey. So.
And when you get to the playoffs, it is a complete different. I won't say the energy is so much more. It's so much different. It is. It goes up a whole nother notch. Yes,
it's so amazing to me that hockey, the difference between the very best team and the second best team is, and it's always going to be one goal game. And it's like, how can the best team still win all the time? And then, a lot of that can go out the window in the playoffs. It's just because the energy's so different,
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
right. And teams are different. If you have a success in the regular season, I think that's why the President's Cup winner is kind of cursed sometimes. It's because you're a different playoff team maybe than you are in the regular season. We have a great regular season team, and then maybe not built for the playoffs sometimes. But
Everybody's
you guys
coming
don't
at
seem to be
that
having any
thing,
issues.
too.
I hope not. I hope not. I don't have any issues.
We like playing you guys because you whip up on us quite a bit. So every time you come here, so it's, it's like, oh, we're going to lose 8-0 again.
You know, Dave, we have so much to talk to you about, but we don't want to miss out on a headline that just happened to you recently, and that was you all just won the gold at the World Beer Cup for True Blonde in the English style pale ale category. And man, can you talk about that? Because that had to be such a tremendous victory and achievement for you guys.
Oh yeah, it was. We were on a little bit of a drought. I think the last time we won was 2021. And it was True Blonde. I don't know if it was Great American Beer Fest or World Beer Cup, but yeah. So going, 4 or 5 years without winning one of those major medals, that's like it's kind of hard. You wonder if you'll ever win one again, and it's so hard to win right now. So like, there's breweries, like our good friends up in Golden, Colorado at Cannonball Creek who win every Great American Beer Fest. They'll win at least one, if not 2 or 3. They won Small Brewer of the Year this past year. Those guys keep winning, but I think they're an anomaly for the rest of us, especially a lot of the legacy brewers. It's just so hard to win with 10,000 breweries out there. But this one was really kind of validating because it was the very first beer we ever made here in 1995. The very first batch of beer was True Blonde, and we've won, I think, 5 Great American Beer Fests, and this was our 3rd World Beer Cup with that beer. So it's just I think it's a testament to your flagships when there's a lot of noise going on and a lot of craziness and diversity, which I love. But I think, you don't ever want to give up on your flagships and get caught chasing too many trends, because they're there, they're solid. And True Blonde stays, we're not growing as far as territory goes, certain beers are growing, new releases growing for us, but that beer just maintains a rate of sale for us that is something we can depend on. And it's just been consistent and the same thing year after year after year. And, yeah, I don't know, it was really special to win again. And especially with that beer. And it's like I said, we were all in our tasting room watching it live. And, when you get through half of the competition, when you're sitting there watching it with a bunch of customers and stuff in the tasting room, and you haven't won, and you've gone through like 2 or 3 categories that you were entered in, you're just like, what? There's no fucking chance we're going to win anything, And then all of a
Right.
sudden it happens, and like the whole place just erupts. And I don't know. It's a great feeling. So I really appreciate you bringing that up, because I'm still on a high from it.
How many breweries were you competing with in that particular style to win?
I want to say it was 73, but I might have just pulled that out of my butt. I
Well,
don't know
a
why that
lot.
name's in my
We'll just
head.
say a lot. It was a lot.
Yeah, in that category. So the
Yeah.
categories are all so big now, it's just crazy.
Well, that's got to give you such validation after 31 years. It's this consistent beer that you keep coming out, that you put out every year for 31 years. And not that beer gets dated, but you've seen breweries come and go, and you've seen beers come and go in these categories, and you're still doing it after 31 years with one of your flagships. That's amazing. And like you said, you get that validation, like, shit, yeah, we're still doing it.
Yeah, it's crazy. And and you see it I mean, it's cool with certain, like I said, legacy breweries or whatever. Breweries have been around for a while, and some of their flagships just go away over time. And just knowing that this was we're never losing sales with it. It's always maintaining, and it's a really popular beer in our tasting room. Does exactly what we expect it to do out in the market. Maybe to its and our own detriment, we don't put a lot of effort into marketing it. And but it just does what it does. It's a workhorse. And so it's kind of it's an approachable beer. It's in the English style pale category, and it's definitely more of an English style beer. I think our yeast strain is still the original Ringwood strain 1187 that we used in it on day one. And the recipes, I don't know that it's changed at all. If not, maybe a little slightly, like just there's some local honey in there that changes a little bit, so we got to do little tweaks, but not really a change. So it's cool. It is what it is. And I couldn't, there's not a beer I would rather win with probably a better way to sum it all up.
Do you remember going back to like 1995 or maybe even a little bit before then when you started brewing this beer? Did you know instantly, man, this thing is going to take off? This is going to take us to new levels.
No.
No, yeah, I mean, what was it then? I mean, was it just like, did you know, or did it take a while to figure that out?
No, when we opened our brewery, it was myself and my good friend Bill that started it with me. And my buddy Kyle, who at the time was the head brewer at the Wynkoop Brewing Company in Denver. We gave him like 10%, which we bought out long ago, but just to help us make the jump from home brewer to pro brewer, I guess. But we had no idea what we were doing. We came up with names before beers, just whatever funny name popped into our mind was the reason to brew any specific style. So we were coming up with basically the back of a napkin business plan in the local bar called the El Rancho Tavern down on Main Street in Durango. And we just wrote, oh, True Blonde's a good name. Let's come up with it. Let's do a blonde beer. So, and that was our first year. And then actually that same day we went to brew our second batch. That was supposed to be True Blonde, but this is how unorganized we were. I still remember this day vividly. We finished the first True Blonde and went to mash in the second. And halfway through mashing in, we didn't have the ingredients. So we were like, we were young punks and we were just like, we were excited and we just there wasn't a lot of planning in certain areas. And so the second batch actually became what was known as Pinstripe, which was our second longest brewing beer. It's still kind of one of our flagships. It's a lot more popular right in our backyard than in our other markets. But yeah, it was like we had no idea at all. And we actually served those first 2 kegs at the Telluride Blues and Brews Festival of True Blonde. And at that time it was called the Telluride Brewers Festival. And it was I remember because we met some cool brewers from Telluride, old brewery that's long gone now, that became dear friends of ours. And they were just like, something's not right with this. And yeah, there were issues with it. There were yeast issues. The yeast was not healthy. And I think it was a little bit oxidized and it had some diacetyl issues. And but 1995, young kids, basically nobody, and it was still novel. There wasn't, nobody knew anything, like nobody knew any better. So as the response was that it was fantastic. We knew something wasn't quite right with it, but we dialed it in with a little help from those guys in Telluride. And by our second batch, we were brewing a much cleaner, better beer. But yeah, those first 2 kegs, I don't know. We had no idea that we had no idea we'd be around 31 years later, let alone that very first beer.
I mean, you can honestly say that is a backbone, or at least one of the backbones of Ska Brewing is that beer.
Absolutely. 100%. Yep.
I'm excited
built
for
the
you.
brand, right?
Yeah, I'm excited for you. Just from that effort that you made way back when to now that you've won. The other question that I have is, starting way back when, 1995. I mean, craft beer started to become a thing. What got you? Do you remember really what got you into? I want to get into this craft beer thing and try to make a go of it.
Totally. I've told the story a lot, but Bill and I in we were good students, but we partied in high school, and so we were really into drinking beer when we were in high school, and we were actually in my dad's living room, my parents' living room, and we ran across a book, and on the spine it just said beer book, and it was like a 3-ring binder, and we were like, beer book, awesome. When we pulled it off, just because it was alcohol, we pulled it off the shelves, and we opened it up and we started flipping through it, and we're like, what is this? It's like pages of notebook paper. And we realized that it was homebrew log sheets, and my dad had been homebrewing, and this was in about 1985. And his first batch in that notebook was in 1969, and his last batch was 1980. So he probably quit right about when I might have started to notice what he was up to, because I would have been in like 7th grade around then. And we started flipping through that book and we're like, oh my God, he was actually making his own beer. My dad was making his own beer. And, 69, 8 years before it was even legalized.
Yep.
And
Yep.
well, we're flipping through it and we're thinking like, where does he add the alcohol at? And that's when we realized he was actually creating the alcohol. And that was just a light bulb moment. And so we jumped right into it and my dad got excited about it. He jumped into it with us. And so when we were in high school, there wasn't even a homebrew shop in Colorado yet. And so we started brewing with my dad. We bought all of our equipment and ingredients from a friend of his up in Wyoming, made a road trip up there. And you could buy malt extract in the baking section of the grocery store at the time. So it was it was very exciting, very cool. And that's what got us into it. And then it became our complete passion. And even through college, I was a communications major, and every project I did, whether it was a speech, a video, a technical writing paper, it was all on brewing beer. And so our dream was obviously to open a brewery at some point. And, we
Right
did it,
on.
very little money when we were still really young, and we had no business sense other than a couple classes in college, and had no idea that it would actually persevere. So it was to think back about, like, we got in it at the right time, but it was weird. You couldn't just Google how to start a brewery, So
Right. And
it
like
was
you said, you're getting stuff out of the grocery store, but ingredients still just had to be hard to come by. There weren't,
totally.
stores you could go to or stuff to order off the internet. Like you probably had to scramble to find stuff.
But yeah, in fact, hold on 1 second. See if I got this here. I just stumbled across this yesterday. I've got it here. Maybe I got rid of it. Well, it was it was actually typed out on a typewriter, and it was a price book from my dad's buddy who sold the ingredients out of his basement in Wyoming. And we had this price list that was typed out on a typewriter, and he would send that to us in the mail. And then we would either drive to Wyoming to buy ingredients, or we would write him a letter and send him a check and,
Yeah.
and he'd ship us ingredients.
So crazy. That's
Yeah,
so
it's
crazy. Can I
crazy.
ask what was your dad brewing? Was he creating his recipes? I mean, I guess he had to, because there are really no
Oh, it's
clones of anything
hysterical.
back
And
then.
I have that beer book to this day. And the very first log sheet in 1969, batch 1, all it was yeast, sugar, water. And then it was like, and there was one note, blew up all over the place upon open. That was the entire recipe and the entire.
Learning the hard way.
He was making prison juice.
Yeah, that also could have went the way of a still too. That could have been whiskey too at the same. If
Totally.
he had just.
So he got, I don't know if he ever even got a hold of the Complete Joy of Homebrewing, the Papazian book back then, but that was what we started with. And but yeah, his the recipes were very, very simple. They got a little more complex. He didn't even have hops in that first one. He had no
I
clue.
was gonna say there's no. It's
Just trying
when
it
he
from
got back
scratch.
into it. When he got back into it with you guys, was he? I can just imagine like his homebrew stories, like because he probably was doing it by himself, or maybe with a couple of buddies. I bet he had some really great stories from those days.
Oh yeah, and I don't really remember, like, because he was. I mean, they had a lot of fun with it, and but they just never knew what they were doing, so they never really brewed good beer. So I don't think they got excited because it was delicious, But when he first started brewing with us, and later that same first year was when the first homebrew shop in Colorado would open up. And so we started talking to those guys and going to that and just hanging out there. And our beers got so much better, so much more quickly. And I remember Boulder Beer was one of those early breweries that you could get. I remember buying 6 packs of it in a wooden crate, and they had a little neck tag on each bottle that explained why there was sediment in the bottom of the bottle. And I remember my dad and I just thinking those were the most delicious things ever in the world. And he got re-hooked on it and then started brewing much better beer. And I think it was exciting for all of us. He helped me with all my college projects, and it was cool.
Dude, what a great thing to do with your dad, right? And to know
Yeah.
that he had done it before and you just kind of rediscovered this thing. That is so cool.
I have a two-part question. So the brewery equipment that your dad used then, and the brewery equipment that you were using when you first started, is it still around?
I think there's a good chance it could be there. We kept everything in the basement of my parents' house. They still live up in Denver. I'm actually headed up there tomorrow, so I'm gonna look. But yeah, and there was it was an unfinished basement and it actually had a drain in it. And so we used to do everything there. But I remember starting a batch of beer and then going off to college or moving and never finish, leaving it in the plastic fermenter, in the bucket. And so I wouldn't be surprised if there's a bucket full of moldy wort down there.
Can you imagine?
Probably so.
Somebody
but
discovers that one day.
There's a good chance that some of that stuff could still be down there, like just under our stairway where we just kind of pushed everything away over the years because they've never finished the basement. So I'm going to check. this
It'd be
weekend.
wild just to see, because I'm sure, even to today's, compared to today's stuff, it probably looks very primitive, stuff they were using or you were using.
Totally.
Hey, you'll have to let us know. I'm really curious.
I would love to know what that is. That's a great
If
question.
you got the pictures and if you could send it to us, we would post it. We would. That would be awesome.
Cool.
That is
I'll check
cool.
and see.
That's cool. Hey, before we go any further, what does that say on your shirt? It says property of Utica Club.
Yeah.
Are you talking?
Upstate
That's
New York.
Saranac.
Yeah.
No shit.
You guys
Utica,
just
New
recently
York.
had FX Matt on
We
the
did.
podcast.
Yes.
I kept seeing the top of that. I go, does that say Utica Club? And is it the same Utica Club? That is rad. That is awesome.
That was not intentional. It was just the hoodie I threw on. I went out there and it's been quite a few years, but we were just on a road trip out there and I had, through another friend of mine, actually my brother-in-law who works at Left Hand Brewing, he had met FX Matt and somehow gave me his phone number and a brewer's phone number. And we were passing through Utica and I just shot him a quick text or something. And man, they met us there and gave us like a 2.5 hour tour. And yeah, what a cool story. What an old killer brewery. Have you guys been to the brewery before?
No.
It's amazing. Yeah, I've never seen anything like it. Like, they've got horizontal glass line tanks buried in the ground, that it's like it is cool. I mean, it's late 1800s.
Yeah.
Well,
little stuff.
and I was going to say that I'm not even so sure that Scott and I have had the opportunity on a podcast episode to talk about. I mean, he brought up the history when we had him on, but the one of the biggest things that amazed me was, you think of Prohibition, and they were able to get through Prohibition back in those days and reinvent themselves. And now it's fourth generation. I mean, come on. It's amazing.
It's amazing.
Utica Club was the first legal beer after Prohibition. It was licensed number 1.
No
the actual
kidding.
Utica Club. Yes, 100%. Yep.
When we were there, it was like I said, it was quite a few years ago now, but they had just kind of started making it again. I don't know if it was ever out of production, but they were putting a lot of attention into it. And so it was exciting. So we drank a bunch of it while I was there, and it was exciting for them. And I don't know, nostalgia is a thing that I love. I love old stories. I love history, and especially beer,
Yeah, I was upstate New York back in October, and I knew of Utica Club, but never really had. Remember the old Doltz and Shuley commercials, and we talked a lot about that in the episode. But they were selling the Utica Club pretty kind of everywhere. You could kind of get it. You go into a bar, and they would have it. So I'd had several of them over the weekend, and then I even brought Steve one back too. It's like, you got to have this. It is that nostalgia, but it's like, this is Prohibition beer, man. This is how they made this shit that long ago.
They had it was cool. We went to a couple little bars in town, and they still had old Utica Club signs, from way back. I don't know. It's cool. Cool town too.
Yeah.
I'm glad you got to see that. Is on my bucket list now, especially after talking to Fred. We were like, oh my god, that is just the history there is just it's amazing.
Yeah, it's
I
one of the
saw that
things.
and I was like,
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say it's one of the things it's really been a joy when we do this podcast of hearing about some of the stories like that, and we know you have a lot of them as well.
and I love that you're repping another brewery. That's just cool. That is that camaraderie between breweries, right? And then you appreciate it. You guys have a pretty good history too. I mean, 31 years is nothing to sneeze at.
No, it seems crazy to me. It's like trying to measure. It's been well over half my life, and it just seems like I don't. Granted, the brewery's a different place than it was. Far different place than it ever was. It's a much different, bigger, newer building, and but it's really weird. To me, like when I walk in here, I still feel the same, and I still feel like I'm that same age. I feel like a kid, and beer's still that exciting to me. And so I don't know. I love coming in here, and it is funny thinking about it. It's interesting, and I don't know if Emily told you this, but my two partners and I, my other partner Matt Vincent, he joined us after our first year. All good friends, and we're the same three owners all this time. But we sold the brewery this past year, and so I've been going through all our old corporate documents. I just found our original stock certificates that we bought at the office supply store and issued to each other just yesterday when I saw that typed out homebrew. I've been going through all that stuff in the last couple of days just because it's all in boxes in my office. And I don't need all that old corporate crap anymore. It's corporate crap, whatever. But, I don't need the stuff from our original operating agreement or whatever it was, So I'm just cleaning out my office, but it's hard. I can only do it for about 15 minutes before I start tearing up
Yeah.
because it's so I don't know. It just means so much to me.
Yeah, it's something you built. I mean, you built it's your baby. You built it.
Yeah.
Is it
It's
is it
cool.
hard to pin down like of some of the stuff that you've found so far? Is it kind of hard to pin down like two or three things in particular that you've come across where you're like, whoa?
Yeah. I mean, there's I was just trying to find that typewritten homebrew sheet, but I do have some of our homebrew recipes.
Oh
This is
man.
our West 3rd Avenue coriander wheat recipe.
And you've kept them.
What's that?
And you've kept them.
Yeah, I can't get rid of this stuff,
Like, can you read? Like, can you read the page you just showed?
Yeah.
The page you just showed. Can you read a little bit, or can you tell us a little bit, like what the recipe was for that?
Yeah, so this was a coriander wheat beer, and this had to be, it was before we started the brewery, so it's probably 1994. 5 pounds pale two-row, 5 pounds of wheat. I wonder if we were doing full grain at this time. So yeah, half-pound Crystal, half-pound Munich. Let's see. Gosh, it's hard to. We added some gypsum at some point.
I love this.
Added water at 200 degrees. 5 quarts of water at 200 degrees, held at 155 for 15 minutes. I can't remember what our equipment might have looked like on any particular batch because my third partner that joined us, Matt, he ended up, I don't know if you guys know this company, but he ended up starting a company making depalletizers for canning lines called Ska Fabricating or Ska Fab, which he sold in 2021, but he just had an engineering mind. So every day every time we brewed, we thought of something cooler we could do. And we'd run to the hardware store and create a piece of equipment. And he actually turned it into a multi-million-dollar business, over the years, and he sold it and did really well. But it was that was all just because it wasn't available to us. So we would engineer it and create it. So our equipment was changing all the time. I remember making heat exchangers out of copper and garden hoses, in the hardware store. So I see we got some Irish moss in here. The hops looks like all Willamette hops. Oh, Mount Hood, and then Coriander.
Did that particular beer make it onto your tap list at Ska?
No, it never did. And, I think I know why. Matt, my partner, him and his roommate that he lived with, this is when we first met him. We met this guy because in Durango, Bill and I, we didn't know him yet, but we were the only homebrewers that we knew. It was just the two of us. And we were doing all grain, and we heard about this kid doing all grain homebrew. And he was a punk kid, and he was with a bunch of skateboarder kids, and they all lived in one house on the other side of town. And we heard he was having a homebrew party, and he was going to have 3 kegs of his homebrew on tap on his kegerator that held 5-gallon kegs. And we just had one for an alt beer that we had just made. I even remember the beer. And we were like, let's just show up at this party with our own 5-gallon keg of homebrew, see what happens. And so we just showed up at the party, and Matt freaked out, and he was like, no way. And he threw it on tap, and then we all partied all night. And we had that kegerator, it was a green kegerator that we had for years in our first tasting room. It was actually what we were pouring beers out of. And, but his roommate really loved coriander, and Matt didn't. And so he didn't like the beer because his roommate would put way too much coriander in it. And, coriander's got that effect still to this day. Cilantro as well. It's
you don't need
you
much.
either love it or you hate it.
Mm-hmm.
And they had that. And so it was a no-go, even though he was forced to brew it every now and again.
Dave, you got to keep those sheets. When the Beatles were writing songs and they're writing lyrics down and they were leaving them all over the place, and people they didn't know what they were doing. People would come by and just scoop them up. That you need to hang on to those.
I mean, I keep thinking about, like there's the shows. There's one that comes to mind where people walk into a house and they go up to somebody's attic and they're like, wait a minute, there's Abraham Lincoln's signature on this document. And it's like, this is going to be you one day,
Yeah, I like this. Abraham Lincoln and the Beatles.
Yes. Hang on to it, man. You never know.
Hang on to it. There's a thread there, though. I don't want to be assassinated.
No. Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Okay. For anyone listening, Dave will probably just give it to you if you ask him for it. You don't have to shoot him over.
That's right. No, we want things to be celebrated with you from a historical perspective.
Dave said, hey, I'll just give it to you, man. You can have it. Hey, we've not talked yet. No, Ska Brewing, the name isn't just a random name. And actually, there's something behind it. And I didn't know this until kind of Emily started talking about you guys. And it's a whole style of music, right? So talk to us about how you incorporated Ska Brewing, Ska music. You guys are obviously fans of that style of music. Will you kind of tell us how that all came to be?
Yeah, you bet. It's I mean, that's the core of the whole thing, obviously. And it's when we were ska music, for those who don't know, it originated in Jamaica in the late 50s. And it's, without getting too complicated, it eventually evolved into what became known as rock steady and then reggae. So the roots of reggae is traditional Jamaican ska. But the trajectory of ska itself was, after that traditional kind of wave, which they called the first wave, it skipped the pond and caught on with working class black and white kids over in the UK, London area. And so they started forming these bands I hate to describe it this way because it's not true, and any purists listening would get really pissed off. But if you don't know what you're listening to, it sounds like fast reggae. And so it's got horns and it's really about where the beat falls. But these black and white kids, these working class kids in London and the UK, throughout the UK really, but London was kind of epicenter. They started forming these bands, and that became known as the two-tone era, with bands like the English Beat and the Specials, the second wave of ska. And then it kind of skipped the pond back to the United States and that was the third wave. And that's where it kind of started to merge with some punk rock. So it was like punk rock with horns, and you'd have this ska beat. But anyways, back to what it meant to us. In high school, we were really into punk rock and ska. our brewing regimen, it's like sports fans. Like, we're very superstitious about brewing. You guys might have some superstitions like throughout your procedure, however you go about making a batch of beer. There's probably certain things you're pretty particular about that are hokey, you know?
Right. Yeah. You don't
And
really
so,
want to say it out loud. Yeah.
yeah, our two criteria every batch was we have to listen to ska music while we brew, and we have to drink the beers we're drinking have to be from the previous batch or the newest one that was ready to drink. And so those two things are what we always did. And then, back then it was nobody really, it was novel to have a bottle of beer with a label on it. Those were the early Apple Macintosh computers. And we were making labels and cutting them out with X-Acto knives, but we could print text in green or red. So it wasn't, we just had we made funny, silly labels and gave them out as Christmas presents. And we would always put, whether it was My Kitchen or Bill's Kitchen, Ska Brewing, brewed and bottled by Ska Brewing Company, Dave's Kitchen, Denver, Colorado, or Bill's Kitchen, Boulder, Colorado. And then when we actually got to the point, we're 10 years later where we're going to actually start a brewery, I was like, well, what are we, all the breweries at the time were named after mountains, rivers, or dogs. And I was like, well, what mountain, what are we going to call it? And Bill's like, oh, we're calling it Ska. We're not changing that. And I'm like, nobody even knows what that means, Some of the college kids for sure, but Bill insisted, and I'm glad he did. And so, yeah, we moved forward and called it Ska Brewing. Some of the, our first account was, one of our first accounts was off in the mountains by this reservoir in town and right outside of town. And it was a steakhouse, and it was a bunch of cowboys, that lived out there, and they were like guides and hunting guides. And those guys made up an acronym for it, and they told all their customers it stood for shit kicking ales. And it was just an acronym for shit kicking ales. So, we're in a rural area, a lot of cowboys here. So it's like half the town was college kids. They knew what ska music was. Half the town was cowboys. They thought it was shit kicking ales.
Hey, I do
And
want
we've
to
managed
say,
it ever since. It was like all we knew at the time, what we were really into was beer, comic books, and ska music. And so we wrote a comic book. All our characters were people from within the ska scene, and all our characters became like names of beers and labels that we still use to this day. True Blonde was actually the heroine character of the comic book. So pretty, and it was all ridiculous, but God, here we are somehow.
Yeah, and seriously, but so you kind of hinted on this. You've incorporated that into the brand. You've got labeling. You've got. We're going to talk to you about your website in a few minutes because that's a whole conversation because it's awesome.
yes, it is.
You've got that in there. So it's totally incorporated into the beer and the brand and the labeling and stuff. And I think that's cool. You're able to maintain that and have maintained that the whole time.
Yeah, I think it's I think that's one of the cool things. We talk about it all the time because you never want to lose, when you've been around this song, you don't want to lose any kind of culture you've created or authenticity. And it was like, man, it's kind of like, well, we have to just, stick to the comic book. It's like, and we actually, no joke, we go back to the comic book sometimes looking for direction. It's like, no, man, this is what it's about. This is what we're about. And I think, if there's one thing like millennials and Gen Z can sniff out, it's inauthenticity.
Yeah.
It's like when you're genuinely doing what you've always done and you're truly yourself, that goes a long way. And I think that, that's good advice, I think, for any brewer or any business person at all right now. And so for us, I feel really fortunate. At the time, I thought we were kind of really narrowing our market down to about as niche as it could get. Thought it was kind of a bad idea, and I'm glad Bill insisted because even though it's not, ska music isn't that well known, but I think if you get to know any of it and you get to know us as people and the character of the brewery, you can tell that we've done what we felt like doing all 31 years. There's no other influence out there. It's like we're just doing what we want to do, having fun doing it.
Wikipedia is not always the most greatest source for different things, but if you type in ska, Wikipedia has a whole page about it.
Yeah.
You gave it a whole much better presentation than Wikipedia would do. You know, yeah.
It's fun, danceable music, and it's actually there is a dance called the ska. We actually there was an old classic album called Dance the Ska. And we actually put out our own album called Drink the Ska.
I'm gonna say that looks very familiar. Some of that that
got these classic ska dance moves on the back. And those are actually employees of ours.
Where can someone find one of those records?
There's the record company that we did this with is called Jump Up Records, and they're out of Chicago.
Dude,
He
that's the
curated
coolest
half
thing.
the album. I curated the other half. It's cool because I've always been so into music, but I can't play anything. So now I've actually put out a record, even though I'm not a anyway. So, but it's and so it's kind of it's the music itself is traditionally it was kind of a blend of R&B and like traditional Caribbean rhythms, and it kind of but it's very danceable and fun. You know, it was that two-tone era or that second wave was pretty political. Well, a lot of it has been very political, but also very fun and danceable at the same time. And that's where all the black and white checkers come from too. That was the second wave, and that's a unity thing between black and white kids that were in part of this movement. And for us, it worked great back in 1995 because there wasn't digital printing, and if you wanted to print stationery or business cards or labels, you know, printing just black on white was the cheapest way to go. So, you know, bonus points right there for the motif.
You mentioned early on that you like coming to work, and when you come into work and it's, you know, you kind of feel like you're that age. Dude, you go to work, you're making beer, and you've got this music thing around you too. Like, it's got to be the greatest job on earth. You've got all these things around you that you just love, right? It's the music, you're playing the music, and it how many people could say they like going to work that well? I'm guessing probably not many.
I'm pretty grateful. I've got to admit, you know, like selling the place, still getting to be here. I'm really glad that they just don't want anything to change. It's two local guys that bought it, and they're retired, and we've known them for a long time, and it's cool because they want me here, and they don't want anything to change, and I feel really fortunate because of that. But yeah, I mean, I just couldn't imagine anything else now. You know, for having one job for 30 plus years is not ordinary. and it's mostly because people get tired of it and they want to move on. And whether it's a brewery or not, I mean, maybe not everybody that jumped into the brewing industry in the last 15 or 20 years should have, you know, but for me, it wasn't ever a question. And, you know, I still believe very solidly in beer, and I know it's facing headwinds, and, but it's been very cyclical. I've seen it just in the time that we've had our own brewery, but over history for thousands of years, you know, it's gone up and down, and a lot of other trendy stuff is come and gone. And, so I really believe in beer and the magic of beer and the feel of a pub and all of it. I mean, the diversity of flavors and the things you can do with beer. And to me, it's just so great that I mean, how could you not love it? You know, it's like, and just listen to us talking, you know?
I think there was a point that I thought about in the beginning when we talked about your True Blonde. Scott and I have talked about this with other brewers. Certain styles of beer that are coming back now, lagers. Your True Blonde in 1995, and all of a sudden here we are in 2026, and it's it's still relevant to to this day. Maybe 10, 15 years ago people weren't buying as much. I don't know, but here they are today, and it's winning awards.
Yeah, I think it'll be cool to check. Like, let's see what happens over the course of this month since the World Beer Cup. You know, does consumption of it go up? I mean, it seems like there's been a fair amount of attention around it. I feel like between the GABF and the World Beer Cup, we had a bit of a lull, like maybe, I want to say maybe, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago till 5, 6 years ago. And then since then, I feel like I get really excited again about not just us winning awards, but any friends winning awards, and it's starting to get attention again. And so I wonder, if we're going to get any legs out of that, particularly in our tasting room. Our sales going to go up in the tasting room. So in the next few weeks, we'll be watching that to see, if it makes a measurable difference. But yeah, I mean, you're right, and those styles. I mean, as excited as I am about something like our West Coast IPA, our older real flagship Modus Operandi, another IPA, like an original old school West Coast IPA, is still hanging in there. It's our second strongest selling beer. And it's kind of those, I think, yeah, and like you said, the lighter lagers coming back. And I love that because it kind of, it just shows you what really can stand the test of time and maybe, I mean, for us, there's certain beers and trends that that we've jumped on board with. There's also other things that we haven't. Hazy was one where we were kind of divided when hazy IPAs first started, but some of us insisted on it, really liked them. Some of us swore we'd never like them. And that's one of our best selling beers, just our main hazy IPA. But we never got into like milkshake IPAs,
Yeah.
juicy IPAs that tasted like juice. It was never a thing we wanted to do. And so, yeah, I mean, once again, it's another validating part of this conversation and what has happened. Like, I love seeing classic styles come back, and they always do,
See,
Well,
you
it's
guys,
fun-
you guys have
yeah.
been around long enough. You've got that history. We're talking to Fred Matt was the same way. It's like you've been around long. Now you're starting to see those cycles start coming back, right? And you like, hey, if you can weather the storm, or hey, this thing's a trend that's going to come back to whatever. You've been around long enough to see those things.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, we can track it in our own numbers, we've seen it just within our own brewery come and go, and those styles, they come back, and they always do.
Yeah.
And it's yeah, and it's, I don't know. I mean, I love that. I love it because there's still, I think, I mean, I'm drinking mostly our West Coast like day to day right now. That's what I've been drinking at the end of the day in our tasting room. But our older IPA and blonde are beers that they're go-tos for me, at home on the weekend, whatever it is. That's what I've always got a nice stash of. And it's, I don't know. It's great. It's like you said, it's cool to see that it does come back, maybe we'll see. There's a lot of, I mean, a lot of stuff like that, I guess, in life where it's the old stuff was cool for some reason at some point, and now everyone's starting to realize why again.
Well, and I think it's good to touch on this because last year for your 30th anniversary, you had brought back some of your flagship beers. You did it each month. Are there certain beers and certain ones, kind of going a little bit what we were saying before, that really had some special meaning to you that you were able to bring back last year?
Yeah, there was two. When we first started, it was I'm kind of glad you asked that because it's fun to think about. But when we first started, and I remember like some of the brew pubs that kind of created a chain, like Rock Bottom, for example.
Yeah,
And
they
friends
were here
working
in
at
Nashville.
back then. And their MO when they would open a new brewery, and this is mid 90s, I don't know after that really, but they would give some freedom to the brewer, but they were like, you got to hit this color spectrum. You got to have a light looking beer, you got to have an amber beer, you got to have a brown beer, you got to have a dark beer. And so that was kind of our mentality when we started, because that's what we got from other people that were already out there doing it. And that is how we came up with Blonde. And then Pinstripe was our red beer. And then we had two other beers, Buster Nut Brown and 10 Pin Porter. And both of those beers we brought back last year during our 30th anniversary. We were bringing a new one back every every month. And it was, that was those two in particular, just because they were part of that original lineup, really fun to bring back. And what was cool about it was a lot of people that have long since left Durango, saw that we were doing it on social media and started chiming in about how that was their
Uh,
favorite beer 25 years ago, or whatever. And we even had a funeral. When we retired those beers, at that time, it was kind of a big deal to retire a flagship. So we actually had a funeral for 10 Pin Porter, and we all were wearing dark suits, and we had a little casket. we buried it. We buried it in our beer garden. It's still buried out there. It's all on, you can see it on YouTube, the 10 Pin Porter funeral. And it was like, I mean, those beers meant so much to us, and it was the first half of our existence. They were our bread and butter. And so bringing them back last year and then having all those other people once again tied into the nostalgia that had fond memories of drinking those beers. Or I really love, that's the beer that got me into craft beer,
yeah.
all of that. So
What made you retire like permanently some of those beers where you're like, this isn't going to be our core beer because you've had some on your tap list for a long time. I know Scott's
yeah,
going like money.
that's it. Do they really
Yeah.
sell that much? And
Yeah.
like the styles come and go. Like I feel like we could do pretty well because some of our darker beers, porters and stouts over the years have been delicious. And I think, they just didn't sell enough to work into our production schedule the right way. I have a feeling some of those darker beers might be able to make a triumphant return in the coming days. And I think because that's what I'm drinking now. Like when I go to a new brewery, a brewery I haven't been to yet, I'm trying to find a porter or a stout. And it's kind of just because for so long, I'm definitely a hops guy and I love IPAs. For so long, I just go IPA is just a go-to. And now I'm like, man, I'm really enjoying something with a little malt and some darker malts and a little less hops. And I'd love to bring back some of those beers again, or at least a twist on those beers.
Do you pull out the notebook for those for those for those? You literally pull the notebook off the shelf and start shuffling through recipes.
We do. And it's funny because I have my own notebooks that actually have notes about why, but then our brewers they have the old recipes, and it's funny because I look through my stuff and it's like, well, this is what we were doing. This is why we were doing it. This is why I'm on the kind of more on the marketing side. And so I was always into like the labels and the comic book side of everything. And so I look back through that stuff and like, what made us think about this? And God, how can I get that creative again? I got to spin off of this somehow,
Yeah. As the brewery grows over 31 years, you start out as kids and we're just going to make some stuff and we start this brewery. But then after a while, you got bills to pay, right? And you got beer, you got to
Yeah.
sell things so it's like,
Yeah.
okay, we have to shift mentality at least a little bit, right? We have to sell beer. We can still make the fun stuff, but we want to stay in business. We have to do this business thing too, right?
Yeah. It was really apparent like when that day kind of hit because, like I said, we had blonde, red, brown, dark, and then those all worked because it was all new to everybody. Craft beer was, and there's all these, you're learning these styles, and then certain styles definitely started to grab hold. And then when craft really started taking off in the early aughts, mid aughts, and diversity started going crazy, then it was kind of like you couldn't just survive on porters anymore. There's definitely exceptions. Black Butte from Deschutes, for example, still their flagship to this day. And it was kind of but I remember, I don't even know if Duck Rabbit Brewing, do you guys remember those guys? Are they still
I do. I think I see him from time to time. Yeah.
They were all stout, It was we just never had them out in Colorado. So now it's hard for me to know, what breweries are still around because unless they're distributing, there's so many. unless you're distributing nationally, it's hard to tell. But
Yeah.
some of that, and then I've seen other breweries that concentrated on one style of beer, and that's hard. I think we have a good example, Bierstadt Lagerhaus in Denver, that focuses just on German style lagers. That's really purist and specific about it. And they do a great job. They were definitely for a while a brewer's brewery, like brewers wanted to go there and drink, but they don't stray, and, and that's an example of where I think it's really worked over time. But there's been a lot of breweries that have had a concept from opening that I'm only going to make this style of beer or that style of beer, and that doesn't stick for very
No.
long.